I think you might need to bring it a bit closer so it takes up more of the screen.
No, I can't do that. Okay, I'll bring it closer. All right, here we go.
It's too far back. All right, welcome to the Pouch, everyone. This is a live recording of the Pouch, the podcast. I'm a little bit, my webcam is a little bit closer today, so you can see all the bristles, which is nice.
I'm a little bit country. You're a little bit rock and roll.
Yeah, you're a little bit rock and roll. But yes, I'm in the Bahamas today. Jake doesn't usually change his background, and as is tradition, he has not done that today.
I have no idea how to change my background.
You have to buy a green screen.
On this medium. But does it doesn't give me the option, does it?
No, I use a different program to you, Jake. So I use a professional program.
I see. You
can put me anywhere, Japan, wherever I want to go.
The moon?
I do whatever I want. I do whatever I want when you tell me you're available. All right. Hello and welcome to The Pouch, the podcast equivalent of a rusted out barbecue that takes a not so serious look at the week in Australian news and politics. I'm Greg. Does this umbrella match my shorts, Savage?
And I'm Jake. Well, Phil, the only thing I can...
Farwarton.
On today's episode, we talk answering questions, changing lyrics, family values, and so much more.
I'm very excited, Jake. And while we're as snug as a bug in this proverbial rug, I want to know what words of our national anthem would you change if you were in charge?
I'd change the whole thing. Sorry, spoiler alert. I'd change the whole thing to Treaty by Yothu Yindi.
Not bad. Not a bad answer. I'll chalk that up. 1 point to Jake. For becoming the next Prime Minister.
What words would you choose?
I would probably change all of them as well, but I would just replace them with more, modern synonyms.
Yep. Like change girt to surrounded.
Yeah. For there is ocean around us.
I think keep girt in because girt's one of those. It's I think the only time I've ever heard the word girt used is in our national anthem.
Well, I was going to say, can you try and use it in a normal sentence? Like, can you use it now in a sentence?
Sure, my house is girt by dirt.
My house is girt by chickens.
It's such a weird word. Weird, like rube.
Yeah, it is like
we're all rubes for using the term girt.
All right, I did just flip you around, Jake, so it looks like we're sort of staring at each other rather than in the same weird direction off to the left, something like that. So anyway, all right, okay, we've got a lot to get through today, Jake, and a happy NAIDOC week. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're podcasting today, and we recognise their continuing connection to land, water, and community. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. Big week, Jake. Very big week. Not only did we miss opportunities to get a few women on board with in federal politics, we also interrupted them. We also missed a couple of opportunities for not getting the Indigenous flag up in Parliament. Whatever side you're on, I suppose, of that particular argument, they did pass this week that they weren't going to show the Indigenous flag, the First Nations people's flag, and the Torres Strait Islands flag in Parliament. So it's still just going to be the Australian flag. How do you feel about that?
I feel like tokenism is a bad thing, and putting it up for a week is a bad thing. I think it should be up there 365 days a year, and on the weird advent of a leap year, 366 days a year.
Yeah, okay. Shouldn't take it down for that other day.
I think it should be up 100% of the time. There's the actual factual history of Australia is that, we were founded 60,000 plus years ago. And then, some other colonizers came and colonized the lands. And added some new culture.
Yeah.
And that new culture shouldn't necessarily be the only one getting the flag.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to Ken Wyatt this week,
Mm.
the Indigenous Affairs Minister, I think he's known as.
Yeah.
He was talking about the fact that the Australian flag represents everyone, that the Australian flag represents everyone, that even the Southern Cross itself has traditional history with First Nations people. So it was interesting hearing him justify why they made that decision this week in government. So it'll be interesting to see how those discussions carry on. It's one of those things, and it's like, at some point it's going to happen, but it just doesn't happen this week. At some point they're going to change Australia Day. It's just not going to happen this year.
The thing is, I'm pretty ambivalent when it comes to things like changing Australia Day.
Yeah.
There's no way it should be me making the claim. Those who have a grievance against it, should have their way. They are Australian. They should have their say. And if Indigenous Australians say that it's too painful, you need to change the date, the date should be changed.
Yeah.
By all rights, it seems a reasonably arbitrary date anyway. But when it comes back to the flag, flags are their symbolism, right? It's symbolism. So you can ascribe whatever symbolism you like. And if that symbolism is spoken about as though the Australian flag in general, from a person like Ken Wyatt, means everything to everyone in Australia, then that's a great thing.
Mm.
I dare say, though, he's not speaking for everyone.
No.
And those people who do see, a reasonable amount of attachment to the symbolism associated with the Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islander flags, should probably be represented as well.
Yeah. Very good. Very, very eloquently put, Jake. What a good start. Let's see if we can keep that momentum going. It's one of my favorite activities to do, actually, in the classroom, is when you get the students to make their own flags. Like, you sort of say, look, this is what a flag is, and this is what you can add to your own flag. What does a flag say about you as an individual? And it's a really good exercise, because then they sort of have a means to to sort of project that thought process onto nations' flags around the world. So yeah, very interesting.
If I were to make a flag, Greg, I'm pretty sure it would be me driving around on a mower with a beer on my left hand, and a chicken on my right shoulder.
Yeah. Chickens do take up a surprising amount of time, don't they? And mine would just be the pouch. I'd probably have.
Yeah, I love that idea. The pouch should be in one of the corners. Yeah.
The pouch of podcast in one side and all the Adobe programs in the other side. That's all right. All right. So speaking of symbolism, Jake. It wouldn't be the first time that Scott Morrison's been accused of not being able to read the room. We've obviously during the bushfires forced handshakes and things like that. Not a really good look, especially for his first run-in with the press and his first sort of media jaunts. And now this week, Anne Ruston was asked a question, and Scott Morrison again not able to read the room.
And jumped in and decided that he'd put in his 2 cents even when he was asked, even when. Anyway, I'm going to go through the story because it needs a bit of context. But
okay, give us the context. Set the scene, Jake. Parliament House. What is it? What are we in? Spring.
We're in the garden.
2020. No one's talking about coronavirus anymore.
No, coronavirus is gone.
Coronavirus is in the past.
3 community transmission
Joel
cases discovered in South Australia this week. Exactly. Yeah, it's all that. But yes, on Tuesday, a journalist, Phil Curry from the Australian Financial the Australian Financial Review, asked Anne Ruston, the Social Services Minister, a question. And she was standing next to the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, during a press conference about changes to the government's job seeker payments in her capacity as the Family and Social Services Minister, right? And the reason why she was asked there, it seems, on the face of it, the reason why it seems she was asked there for that press conference is because immediately, prior, the night prior, there had been a rather unfortunate, you might say, for the government, Four Corners episode, which we'll go into a little bit later.
Well, do you want to do the Four Corners bit first? Do you want to talk about that first, and we'll come back to this?
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, all right. So tell us a bit about this Four Corners episode. So I literally just finished watching it like about an hour ago before we jumped on air. Tell us, set the scene, Jake. Set the scene. We're in autumn. What are we in? Spring.
Yep.
Spring 2020. Coronavirus is gone.
Gosh, it feels
No
like
one's talking
summer.
about that anymore.
Yeah, I love it.
So
Well, yeah. So on Monday night on ABC's Four Corners episode, the culture of Parliament, federal Parliament, and treatment of women came under the spotlight during this ABC Four Corners episode, and revealed that two prominent politicians, Alan Tudge and Christian Porter, had been having tawdry affairs, and that they put forward a rather unfortunate culture of sexism. Now, Alan Tudge has said that the allegations of an affair with a staffer, a relationship with a staffer, were in fact correct, and did the usual apologies, etc., etc. I'm a family man, and family is what I believe in. However, I transgressed, etc. Christian Porter, the Attorney General of Australia, he, however, denied those claims. He also denied the claims about about an overt culture of sexism in the Liberal Party. Now, Prime Minister Scott Morrison said on Tuesday that his ministers should be in, quote, absolutely no doubt about the need to abide by the Ministerial Code of Conduct, which prohibits sex between ministers and their staff. And that was a rule that was introduced by Malcolm Turnbull. You may recall the so-called bonk ban.
Yes, that's right. He's and Scott Morrison's politely asked us not to call it the bonk ban, so we'll call it the bonk ban.
Doesn't like that term. Doesn't like that term because it underscores the seriousness.
That's right.
Of which invariably is certainly true. The premise of a high-profile, high-power boss getting into a relationship with an underling, with a staffer. There can be reasonable claims of coercion put forward, even when coercion is not even suggested because of the power imbalance. But now, one of the revelations from the report is that it follows warnings from other women about a cultural problem within the Liberal Party that disempowers women and turns a blind eye to severe sexual harassment. And this was supported by many of the claims of a bullying culture and indeed a culture of sexualization. Particularly in cabinet, there was claims of bikini judging contests in cabinet that staffers also attended. Now, the other interesting takeaway from this report, from this Four Corners expose, was that both of the politicians, Christian Porter and Alan Tudge, that were named in the report, promoted themselves as family values candidates in the last election.
There was a very well timed showing of an ad, especially from Christian Porter at the end of the documentary around. There was all these allegations, and at the same time, he's promoting himself as a family man, as they all have done, as Alan Tudge has done, as Barnaby Joyce has done. They've all promoted, and I think Alan Tudge was actually against the Gay Marriage Act.
Yes, well, so he spoke out a number of times. Alan Tudge spoke out a number of times during the plebiscite. Specifically about essentially the nature of traditional marriage, saying that traditional marriage should be upheld. Now, his electorate voted to change the Marriage Act to include same-sex marriage, and as a consequence, he voted yes. In Parliament. I think he personally said that he was voting against it, but in Parliament, because his electorate voted yes, he voted yes.
Okay, all right. So he's currently the Minister for Population, Cities and Urban Infrastructure, and like you said, Christian Porter is currently the Attorney General. So these are the program highlighted the fact that they had only focused on Liberal politicians, and the fact that they had done this because they are both currently ministers of the Crown and represent the Australian people, et cetera, et cetera. On the other side of the argument, I read an article in the Australian by Angela Shannon, I think I've written here. She dismissed the program as a political gotcha and a terrible one at that. She said that the original idea behind the bunk ban was dismissed as, by some critics that saying that it will do nothing more than give journalists fodder, which is what sort of played out here. So really, that it wouldn't really change the culture. The bunk ban wouldn't change the culture, but that it would eventually just give journalists fodder, which is what she's saying here, and that it really overtly looked as though it was a hatchet job between the former Prime Minister and the ABC. So sort of just like, it's, as if to say that Malcolm Turnbull still just got a cross to bear with the Liberal Party, and that this was a way to sort of, bring down a couple of people, and it didn't really do a good job of that. I'm not saying I agree with that, but it is one way. That was written in the Australian as of yesterday, or as of this morning.
I would say that the really important thing that expose did was it brought to light the hypocrisy, it seems, of two prominent members of the political party that rules Australia at the moment, that governs Australia at the moment. In that these are two prominent prominent politicians who were family values candidates, who are family values. Traditional family values candidates and traditional family values, on the outside, on their public side. On their private side, it seems, however, they are both denigrating to women. They have allegedly, at least one of them has allegedly had an extramarital affair. The other one did. And has been, actively promoting a culture of sexism and bullying. And, it's one of those things. You can't on one hand claim that you are for, putting forward women, empowering women, empowering families, and ensuring that, families have every chance to survive and thrive. And on the other hand, essentially breaking down your own family, denigrating women, bullying women, and engendering this culture of sexism and bullying.
Yeah.
So sure, it's nice. It's a nice claim to make from that commentator, but I would suggest the major thing that this showed, whether it showed it with a tremendous amount of evidence or not, it showed a level of hypocrisy amongst some prominent politicians, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree with you, and like the fact that I wasn't shocked, I suppose, during the whole thing. I wasn't like it was shocking to hear it, but I wasn't shocked to find out that Canberra is a bit of a boys' club, and that that they've got this sort of behaviour going on. Like I wasn't flabbergasted by the whole revelation. I think
anyone that's worked in corporate Australia has experienced the same. I think one of the things that is probably necessary for the generation in charge now is to look at that culture, look at that behaviour, look at what it does to the employees, look at what it does to the culture of the organisation, and to enact whatever they possibly can to get rid of it. It's not productive. It doesn't help. It's if anything, it reduces your capacity to hire really excellent human beings who happen to also be women.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not an uncommon culture in corporate Australia, and it is absolutely unsurprising that the Liberal Party is full of people who have been extraordinarily successful in corporate life before they went into politics. There's plenty of them in there, and it's not too hard to believe that people may have taken that culture that they fostered and lived with and were brought up in during their burgeoning careers in the private sector into the political sector where it already existed.
All right, so let's circle back, Jake, to use some corporate speak. Let's circle back to story one, where so setting the scene now. So now we've got Anne Ruston standing next to Prime Minister Scott Morrison during, I think, it was an announcement.
The day after that Four Corners episode.
Yep. So a little bit of theatre going on here, but it didn't pan out too well.
No, it was really interesting. So essentially, Anne Ruston, it seems like there was a bit of a strategy on behalf of the Prime Minister to bring Anne Ruston along with him on his morning press conference and questions to the media. Essentially trying to bring forward the optics that perhaps we don't have a problem with women in the Liberal Party.
No.
In fact, we support women, we bring them forward, we empower them, we prop them up, we make them a part of our political party. When Phil Curry, the political editor of the Australian Financial Review, asked Anne Ruston, who is the Minister for Families and Social Services, essentially what it was. Essentially, oh, here we go. He said, "Quote: As a woman in the government, what are your reflections on the culture inside? Has it gotten better, worse, or no change since the bonk ban era?" And she started answering. She said, quote, "Well, Phil, the only thing I can." And she was promptly interrupted by the Prime Minister, who was clearly wanting to control the narrative on this issue, and interrupted Ruston 7 words into her response on essentially a question of whether the culture is better or worse for women since a pivotal moment in the recent past. So essentially say that he didn't like to essentially say that he didn't like the term bonk ban. Being used because it understates the seriousness of the issue. But unfortunately, the real optics that have been put forward here, essentially the optics that Scott Morrison was attempting to portray was that we don't have a cultural issue with women in the Liberal Party. We have strong culture of empowering women to be their best, and unfortunately, the actual optics have given way to a rather sour narrative. Ruston was asked for her perspective as a woman on the issue of the treatment of women, and Morrison spoke over her.
I know, and it's one of the first articles we've had that actually have a link to the BBC.com. So we've gone international with this particular story. I think it's pretty classic. It's very much Scott Morrison not being able to read the room again, isn't it? But I don't know. I suppose. What's his history of interrupting the male politicians? Who knows? He really should have just waited anyway.
He does it. He absolutely does it. And this is the thing. So Scott Morrison is exceptional when it comes to marketing. On the face of it, he is extremely good when it comes to marketing. He is extremely good when it comes to controlling the narrative on an issue. If he doesn't like the way that a question has been asked or the premise behind a question, he will not answer it. He will flat out say, "I'm sorry, I don't accept the premise of that question. Because blah, 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 blah. And, this is the narrative that I'm putting forward. And you will use that narrative when you ask that question next time." And so it is absolutely not unlike Scott Morrison to interrupt a minister who has been, personally asked a question, directly asked a question in order to control the narrative of that question. It's just the optics in this case. As you say, he didn't read the room. It was a question asked of a woman on the treatment of women, the culture of women in the Liberal Party. And unfortunately, he didn't read the room. He interrupted. He created an issue.
All right. So to round things off there, Jake, the treatment of women this week within the Liberal Party, not so crash hot in terms of publicity there, and also just not great for a lot of the women who work there as well. I think that there has been a lot of talk about what this looks like and what this looks like for the Liberal Party, and I think that kind of misses the point in the sense that, well, what about the women who this is happening to? What about the women who've had to step back because of the, is it Rochelle Miller? She literally admits that she stood back from her positions within the Liberal Party because of her treatment. So these are women who have lost out on their careers because of this male dominance within the Liberal Party. So I don't think we need to. I don't think we should lose sight of that either.
It's absolutely not fair. The premise that, because of relationships, that essentially people would be passed over for promotions or opportunities because of, again, because a staffer ostensibly had a relationship with a prominent person, with a minister. The fact that person would be locked out of opportunities is it's not fair. It's not fair. It goes to the heart of what people in the Liberal Party have been saying for years about the question of, should we be having quotas of women? Should we be having quotas of minorities, etc., within certain political roles? And the answer is generally always, all positions should be merit based. We should always be striving for the best person. Invariably, those questions, they shouldn't be, or those positions should not be clouded by questions of questionable relationships.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we shouldn't be losing out the best people to the job because of a macho culture either. So because
100%.
The best people for the job, it seems to me, are often bowing out before they have a chance to move up. So yeah, interesting take on that one. Speaking of fair, Jake, and advancing Australia fair, with the word fair in our national anthem, you'd think we'd be doing a better job of being fair overall. The clue is in the title. Gladys this week has come out and said that she's none too happy with one of the particular words. We did discuss the word "girt" at the beginning of the show, and of course that needs to go, doesn't it? But we'll get there in the end. The more important word here is young, and in all honesty, a sign of the times, Jake. It's not something that I've ever really thought about. I just sort of sung the anthem without really doing a song analysis of it or a lyrical analysis of it. But it was one of these things where they said, "Well, we are young and free." I think they want to change it to something else, and I was like, "Yeah, that's kind of fair enough. We're not really young, so that makes sense."
Look, it's really interesting, as you say. The words, and it's in the second line. I think the second.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free.
Young and free, exactly. So they want to change. Oh, it's in the first line. They want to change "we are young and free" to "we are one and free."
Yeah.
And the premise behind that is, as you say, we ain't young.
No.
The Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders that essentially founded Australia. Did so tens of thousands of years ago, and invariably, they are the oldest living culture in the world. Therefore, the term "young" certainly does point
certainly
to
doesn't do it justice, does it?
It points to federation.
Maybe they could make the argument that young in a cosmic sense.
Perhaps. But invariably they are talking about federation. They're talking about,
that's right.
The Federation of Australia. But indeed, I think Gladys Berejiklian, the Premier of New South Wales, who has come out and said that we should change that first line from "we are young and free" to "we are one and free." Is a very reasonable request. Quote, she says, quote, "I think it's about time we recognise the tens of thousands of years of the First Nations people on this continent. We're tens of thousands of years old when it comes to human inhabitants. It's just a small gesture," and I do indeed agree. Interestingly enough, given that it is NAIDOC Week, the week that we Australians celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and indeed achievements and culture. I would prefer not to cynically reflect that this is an opportunity for Berejiklian to deflect from the last few weeks following the ICAC revelations. I should say the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Ken Wyatt, and the Labor leader, Anthony Albanese, who has not had a great week, unfortunately,
we'll get to that in a second,
have gotten behind the move.
And
I would take I would take Ken Wyatt, the Minister for Indigenous Affairs Indigenous Australians. I would take his promotion of this concept, with a reasonable amount of weight.
Yes,
but I do need to say
it's.
I don't want to be cynical about it. But
well, look, I suppose there's always other things going on, isn't there, around all those other little gossipy, tidbitty things. The judgment of character for these politicians. Some facts, Jake. The original version of Advance Australia Fair, actually, it is considered the second line for We Are Young and Free.
Okay.
The first line was, do you know what the original first line was? It was written in 1878.
1878.
So the first line wasn't Australians all let us rejoice.
Let us rejoice, yeah.
It was. I won't. Do you want to have a guess?
I got no idea.
It was Australia's sons let us rejoice. So that was the original line. So that was changed, like you mentioned, at Federation 1901. It was changed to Australians all let us rejoice. Very progressive for 1901. You can imagine the
didn't
joyous
give women the vote
conversations that
until
they were having back
I think
then.
the 60s, but that's fine.
Yeah, and it wasn't until 1984 that it became the official national anthem. My understanding, I think it was put to a vote.
Well, prior to that, it was "God Save the Queen."
That's right,
that
and
had
Waltzing
been the
Matilda was
anthem for
actually
a long
part of
time.
that situation too. So here we go. On January 22nd, 1976, the Fraser government reinstated God Save the Queen as the national anthem, and it should be used for royal, vice-regal, defence and loyal toast occasions. Fraser stated that Advance Australia Fair, Song of Australia, or Waltzing Matilda could be used for non-regal occasions. His government made plans to conduct a national poll to find a song to use on ceremonial occasions when it was desired to mark a separate Australian identity. This was conducted as a plebiscite to choose the national song, held as an optional additional question in the 1977 referendum on various issues. On 23rd of May, the government announced the results. Advance Australia Fair received 43.29% of the vote, defeating the three alternatives: Waltzing Matilda at 28.28%, the Song of Australia, I don't even know what that is. Should I know what that is? At 9.65%, and the existing national anthem "God Save the Queen." Okay, so we have this whole other song called the Song of Australia.
Song of Australia.
Oh, look, there is a land where summer skies are gleaming with 1,000 eyes, blending in witching harmonies and grassy knoll and forest height. Are flashing in the rosy light, and all above is azure bright. Australia. There is a land where honey flows, where laughing corn luxuriantly grows, land of the myrtle and the rose. On hill and plain the clustering vine is gushing out with purple wine, and cups are quaffed to thee and thine. Australia! There is a land where treasures shine, deep in the dark unfathomed mine, for worshippers at Mommon's shrine, where gold lies hid and rubies gleam, and fabled wealth no more doth seem, the idle fancy of a dream. Australia! There is a land where home steeps peep from the sunny plain and woodland steep, and love and joy bright vigils keep, where the glad voice of childish glee is mingling with the melody of nature's hidden minstrelsy. Australia. There is a land where floating free from mountain top to girdling sea, a proud flag waves exultingly, and freedom's sons the banner bear. No shackled slave can breathe the air. Fairest of Britain's daughters fair, Australia.
Wow.
That got 10% of the vote.
Yeah, that's... I wonder how the Seekers would have done.
Well.
Because
criticism.
When I think of alternatives to the current national anthem, I definitely think Waltzing Matilda would be up there. However, it's that's about a specific subject, I suppose.
Yeah, bit weird too.
But I love "We Are Australian" by the Seekers.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite. It's always one of my go-tos around the campfire.
There's been all sorts of proposed changes to the national anthem. A lot of people just criticize it for being so boring and bland. Like, it really doesn't do us justice at all. But anyway, apparently a whole bunch of Christian schools got in trouble. 50 different Christian schools in 2011 got in trouble for singing a different version of the song. The second verse replaced with the line, "With Christ our head and cornerstone, will build our nation's might." They got reprimanded, Jake, for using that one.
Goodness me.
Anyway, that was written by a Sri Lankan refugee, Ruth Panaya, in 1988. That line. So there you go.
Wow.
Filled with controversy, Jake. We should do a whole episode on the national anthem.
On the national anthem.
Dear. All right. Speaking of love of nation, Jake. And love of nation is very much associated with love of coal, isn't it? We just love our coal here and our coal seam gas. And yeah, we do.
I think we do.
We do. I'm using some right now.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I'm using a bit of solar, although the light is going down, so I dare say the coal will kick in pretty soon.
All right, this story is about Joel Fitzgibbons, Jake, and he is Joel Fitzgibbon, and he's none too happy with the Labor Party at the moment. He's very, very much saying that they've gone down the rabbit hole. The
They've
climate
gone too
change.
far to the left.
Yeah, too far to the left, Jake. They're extremists. They're socialists. They're the dictators that we're all afraid of. You know, they're all marching behind, Premier Dan, and they're all. And his socialist views and with their healthcare.
This is an
and
interesting one because I definitely want to go into what he said. I would say he is definitely right on one thing. We should not be talking about other, about shutting down coal, about shutting down, coal mining and coal-fired power plants. We should not be talking about shutting down coal seam gas and coal seam gas power plants. We should not be talking about shutting down any of those major industries unless we have a plan to transition the workers into other industries.
Yeah, it's got to be done. And I still am yet to hear even a Labor politician answer that with any sort of clout. All right, just a little bit of background on Joel Fitzgibbon. He's an Australian politician, a member of the Australian Labor Party, and has served in the House of Representatives since 1996 federal election, representing the New South Wales seat of Hunter. He served as Minister for Defence 2007 to 2009 in the first Rudd government and Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestries in the second Rudd government. He was also Chief Government Whip in the House of Representatives 2010-2013 in the Gillard government.
And he almost lost his seat in the last election. And he believes that the reason that he almost lost his seat in the last election was the essentially the move of the Labor Party to have a very strong, climate change agenda. Essentially, that they have an agenda that targets emissions reductions, that targets the creation of green jobs, the commencement of the green economy, a Green New Deal, if you will.
Yeah,
I won't. But yes, he's decided to. He almost lost his seat. It came down to a very close margin in the last one. He says he's clawed back a little bit, but he says he's essentially his seat, Hunter, contains a number of I think it's a number of coal seam gas projects.
Yeah,
and as a consequence, he has been fiercely fighting for his job. Not necessarily his constituents, but definitely fighting for his job. And he actually said that a couple of times towards the end of an interview with Michelle Grattan on the Conversation podcast late this week.
Yeah.
But yes, Joel Fitzgibbon has decided to step down from the Shadow Cabinet as Shadow Resources Minister after a protracted internal dispute over climate policy, declaring he regrets not running for the party leadership in 2019.
Yeah, big call. Big call.
Ructions.
So he's retrospectively booting himself out. What's his plan now? What's he going to do? So he's left the Labor Party.
No, he's remaining in the Labor Party. He's left his portfolio,
right?
So his shadow portfolio, and he's going to sit on the back bench where he can do so much more for the resources portfolio.
They must have a pretty weird relationship then from now on.
This is really wonky. Can I tell you, Greg?
You can.
The
premise. Jake, we're friends here. You know, we're all safe here. We're all safe.
The premise that you would leave the resources portfolio, right? A portfolio where you clearly care a lot about resources. The premise that you would leave that portfolio to go and sit in the backbench where you have no portfolio is, to me, really strange.
It is strange.
To me, what this spells out, and I don't want to be one of those conspiracy theorists that constantly puts their hand up and says, "Guess what?"
You have to yell into the mic while you do it, though.
there might be some ructions going on here, Greg. I think this actually spells out that there is likely to be, if he can get some support, and there's probably not a tremendous amount of support there for him. because he has been quite antagonistic over the last few months. I think he might go for a tilt.
Right.
At the leadership.
Jake, you called it. You said it.
That's
I'm
what
writing
I think
it down.
this is.
What's the time?
That's what
7
I think
p.m.
this is.
Right.
With the tilt. So and the reason for that is several fold. Number one, Albanese has had a really weird couple of weeks. Chief among them was when he challenged the Prime Minister of Australia to pick up the phone and call Donald Trump and say, you need to respect the authority of your people, of democracy. Yes. Which he wouldn't have done if he was prime. Anyway, it is
very bizarre. And there's also the easy case to make that, well, Donald Trump is kind of following the law. He's actually not doing anything illegal. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with that, but there is a case to be made for that. So anyway, a bit of a weird thing for another leader to say.
Well, it got even weirder, of course, because later on in the week, essentially, Scott Morrison said he wasn't going to do it. We all believe in. He said Scott Morrison said we all, all of us Western countries, we all believe in, democracy. We all believe in the power of democracy and the power of the people.
Yeah.
And when Anthony Albanese was questioned about it, he said, "Well, he did. He publicly announced that Donald Trump should be doing this.
Yeah.
Therefore, the thing that I said is what the Prime Minister did."
Yeah. Look, it is interesting. It would be. It's a shame from Anthony Albanese's point of view. I mean, when's the federal election next year? We got one next year.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible that it might be next year. Look, a lot of pundits are saying that it will be next year because this year we saw a lot of stimulus.
Yeah.
And next year there's probably,
a bit less.
Not going to be a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, okay. So, all right. So let's hypothesize. Let's call it as well that there's going to be an election next year. This is not a great time for Anthony Albanese to be having interviews on national television and national radio with journalists asking him if his time is done as leader.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's this other thing. So this all came to a head with Joel Fitzgibbon. It all came to a head on Monday night's shadow cabinet discussion.
Ooh.
And it began with Anthony Albanese expressing annoyance that Labor's media strategy following the election of Joe Biden, a strategy that was intended to increase political pressure on the government over climate change, has been blown off course by ill-disciplined commentary.
Yes.
Fitzgibbon responded to Albanese's comment by saying, quote, "I'm in the room. You shouldn't speak about me like I'm not here." And then there was a heated discussion.
Yeah, apparently there was yelling.
Exactly. There was a very heated discussion. You
got to yell that stuff out, Jake. You got to get it out. You got to get it out of your system.
Exactly. Well said. And the next morning he resigned from his portfolio. He'd said that he was going to quit before the end of the year.
Yeah.
But essentially this was this was what did it. And he Joel Fitzgibbon kicked up a bit of muck, you might say. He raked a bit of muck, raking. And he threw it at the shadow climate change minister, Mark Butler, saying that Mark Butler lacked perspective, experience by people in the regions that are dependent on current energy policy.
Well, Jake,
it's clear.
There's no, it's all disciplined conversation here at the Pouch, Jake. So, it'll be fascinating to see how this plays out. Fascinating to see if your gamble on calling Joel Fitzgibbon the next Prime Minister of Australia pays off.
No, I definitely don't think. No, I don't think he has. I don't think he has a chance. I think Anthony Albanese is the best chance that they've got in that he is a person with a personality. And given the populism of Scott Morrison, it's probably the only chance that the Labor Party actually have.
Yeah. It's such a shame, isn't it, that our prime ministership competitions still boil down to people named Scott and Anthony and Joel. Yeah.
Exactly. Where's Bernice?
Exactly.
Where's Taekwondo?
Exactly. Where's Shazza?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Anyway, all right, Jake. Well, only disciplined conversations here. Jake, before we go, Because is that everything? Is that everything? That's everything this week.
That's all 4
It
stories.
was an intense week, wasn't it, Jake? I feel
It was.
It was an intense week, you know. I just do want to bring this up, Jake, just to lighten the load a little bit. The New South Wales Central Coast honey producers fundraise to help bushfire-affected beekeepers. Since losing their beehives in last summer's bushfires, New South Wales Central Coast honey producers Anna and Sven Martin have raised almost $60,000 to keep other beekeepers, help other beekeepers back on their feet. The couple have dedicated the past few years to helping save the world's bee population by rescuing feral hives, re-establishing them, and caring for them. So, very, very good. The honeybee populations are bouncing back, Jake, after years of us reporting on the bee population, you know, in distress and demise. You know, it's buzzing back. The bees are buzzing back.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Is that all you got?
I got nothing. Sorry. It's really great that they're doing that. I love the idea of rescuing feral populations of bees.
Yeah, especially feral bees.
Yeah. How do you tell that a population of bees is feral? I think it just means that it's out in the wild. Is that right? I'm guessing. That's what I'm guessing.
They're not tame. They don't come when you call them.
Yeah.
Dear me, they have sharper teeth and a more aggressive attitude.
Sometimes rabies.
Yeah, that's right. Get diseased honey. Well, Jake, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
No, thank you.
I know that both of us have hectic lives outside of the pouch. You know, much
mainly mowing.
Much to the surprise of our viewers. You know, it's not all we do. It's not all we do. But once our listeners have finished pondering what words they would change in their own in our national anthem, Jake, what would you like them to do?
Oh, look, I'd love it. I would love it if they could join our Patreon.
Yes.
I'd love it if they could join our Patreon. But if they're not ready for that kind of commitment, I would love it if they could tell a friend and write a review for us on the various podcast aggregators that they use.
Write a love letter. Write a love letter to
Jake's
Jake's moustache. Yes, and if you want to share the love, you can do so by telling your friends, families, and foes to head to thepouchofthepodcast.com where they can choose their favorite podcast player of choice and subscribe that way. Thank you to our patrons. Very, very kind of you. Jump on board if you'd like to get some stickers and some mugs. No one's emailed me for a sticker or a mug yet, Jake, so, you know, they're still there. If you want to email me for
Patreon.com / The Pouch the Podcast?
Yeah. Patreon.com // something, The Pouch the Podcast. So, yeah. You'll find us. We're there. You'll find us. There's also a link to some merch in the bottom of the description bit. So, you know, whatever. If you're bored,
get some merch.
Get some merch for Christmas.
The pouch mugs.
Or just email me and you'll get some free stuff.
Quality. Yeah.
thepouchthepodcast@gmail.com. All right, Jake, thank you so much for all of that beautiful conversation, and I look forward to the unfolding orchestra that is the instruments of our federal politics next week.
Very exciting. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, listeners.
Godspeed.